So, will we see this disturbance that's pretty much hugging the Gulf Coast develop into Tropical Storm Dexter? Well, if we were to take a look at its structure right now, it isn't likely to happen anytime in the near future. However, the chance will increase by the time this continues to head further westward. And the reason why it's struggling a little bit is due to the fact that there's a stronger amount of wind shear. There's also a decent amount of dry air on the northern side of this lower level center that's located right now, believe it or not, right over the panhandle of Florida. You might expect that the lower level center would be located with this convective activity right here. However, that's not the case right now, and the reason why we're seeing a disconnect between this convective activity as well as where this lower level center is due to the fact that we're seeing a stronger amount of northwesterly a stronger upper level flow that's coming from the northwest that's pushing a lot of this convective activity further southward, displacing it from its lower level center. On the other hand, we also have stronger lower level winds coming from the south that's pushing the lower level center a little bit to the north of this convective activity. So we're seeing a very tilted structure with this storm between the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere, as well as a lower level center located over Florida, which is the reason why it's expected to struggle a bit over the next few hours and pretty much the entirety of its lifespan. However, there's still around a moderate risk of this developing based on the latest National Hurricane Center forecast, because it is expected that this convective activity could be strong enough to where a new lower level center forms in this area as it continues to head further westward. So right now, the National Hurricane Center is giving this a 40% chance of developing within the next 48 hours and still a 40% chance within the next 7 days. So we're at around a medium chance of this developing, and we're going to need to see a little bit more convective activity for me to be a little bit more confident that we'll see a new lower level center form that could be strong enough to be considered a tropical cyclone. To show you guys a factor that could determine if this develops into a tropical storm or not and makes landfall as a tropical storm potentially right around Louisiana, is taking a look at the upper level wind forecast from the GFS model. We clearly see that there's an upper level high that's located right over the southeast right now, that's bringing a stronger amount of an easterly flow in the upper levels. But if we were to see the lower level winds, you're going to see it's a completely different story, where we're seeing a strong southerly flow throughout Florida and even as far west as the extreme western portion of the Gulf of Mexico. And we see that wind shifts a little bit by the time we approach the central Gulf of Mexico, where it comes a little bit more from the north. So that actually could be key, because if these lower level winds are strong enough from the north, maybe that could bring back the lower level center towards the convective activity for a more aligned structure for this to strengthen. But it doesn't seem like the lower level winds will be strong enough for that. I think the better bet in when it comes to this developing into a tropical storm is if this convective activity you're going to see in the mid-levels of the atmosphere develops a new surface low just off the coast of Louisiana. The GFS model isn't very confident in that right now. Regardless, though, I must emphasize that you still should expect very heavy rainfall over Louisiana and southern Mississippi, and a high risk of flash flooding associated with this moisture, regardless if this develops into a tropical storm or not. So you still want to pay close attention to that. But when we take a look at the European model, the European model does show a little bit more confidence that lower level center could develop. In this specific model run, we don't see it very much either, but we see that a lower level center develops right around the 45-hour mark, and there is a bit more convection to the eastern side of this storm system. And the big difference we see here is that the lower level winds are gonna be a little bit weaker, which means that the wind shear will be weaker, thanks to the fact that it's gonna be a little bit further from this ridge. So that could help this storm system avoid a little bit more wind shear as it continues to head further westward. But another contending factor, as you could probably tell, is the amount of dry air. We're seeing quite a bit of stronger southwesterly winds coming from the mid levels, which could bring a lot of that dry air around this storm system, and that could definitely limit it. But with the European model developing a lower level center, I'll definitely say the chance is still around medium chance this develops into a tropical storm. But again, regardless of whether it does, heavy rainfall should be expected throughout Louisiana and potentially portions of Mississippi. So you still want to prepare for this as if a tropical storm is going to make landfall in those areas, because the flooding will be quite significant. So make sure to prepare accordingly, especially if you live in flood zones throughout Louisiana and Mississippi. Here's a look at the current ensemble members between the two most reliable computer models, and we see a pretty significant difference when it comes to the average trajectory of these ensemble members. We see that in the GFS model scenario, it's forecasting the lower level center to pretty much stay over the pretty much the coastline of the Gulf of Mexico and just interact with a lot of land. So we see very few ensemble members really strengthen it much more than it is right now. It's just going to deal with a little bit too much land interaction, and the ensemble members don't believe that there will be enough convection to the south of it that could maybe develop a new lower level center. That's a different story when we take a look at the European model scenario, where it's a bit more confident that we're going to see a little bit more convective activity for a lower level center to develop, and we even see some ensemble members bring a tropical storm landfall right around the southeast coast of Louisiana. So there's still a decent amount of uncertainty with this forecast, at least when it comes to this developing into tropical storm. But regardless, heavy rain should be expected whether the GFS model is correct or the European model is correct. And you're probably wondering how much rain will be associated with this tropical disturbance or potentially tropical storm Dexter. Well, if we were to take a look at the rainfall forecast, you should expect a large area of 3 to 5 inches of rainfall, and we even see localized areas where you could receive over 5 inches of rain. And keep in mind, this rainfall is going to be very slow moving. This won't necessarily be a fast moving storm system, so that not only raises concern for just regular river flooding that would happen crest in the more long-term future, but of course immediate flash flooding should be a high risk with this storm system, since the thunder showers are going to be so slow moving, and we could easily see localized areas where you should receive anywhere between 1 to 2 inch rainfall in 1 hour, since these storm systems are expected to move very slowly. And keep in mind that it's fairly difficult to forecast which exact areas will receive flash flooding, because a lot of the thunder showers will be rather isolated but slow moving, which does make it a bit difficult to really narrow down who exactly will receive that flash flooding type rainfall. But in all areas in Louisiana, pretty much the entire state of Louisiana and much of southern Mississippi and Alabama, you need to prepare as if a flash flood event is going to impact your area. It's better to be safe than sorry in a scenario like that. So definitely prepare accordingly in all those areas. And to show you guys when you should expect the rainfall, so going into tomorrow, we see that there could be some isolated thunder showers right over the panhandle of Florida, but most of the rainfall activity will be just to the south of you guys, I'd say, for tomorrow. But still, watch out for those heavier thunder showers that could be associated on the northern fringe of this disturbance, so definitely keep that in mind. And it's not until Thursday where things become interesting. We see that the thunder showers become a lot more consolidated, and we see that by 8 a.m. and 11 a.m., the thunder showers are barely moving, staying over the same area. So for a place like New Orleans, you definitely need to prepare for that possibility of flash flooding and other areas in the New Orleans metropolitan area. And continuing to move forward, we see the thunder showers just linger around, fairly isolated but still consolidated over much of southeastern Louisiana, which definitely makes me very concerned that this could be a pretty big flooding event for you guys going into Thursday evening. and even going into much of Friday, the thunder showers should still linger over Louisiana. So definitely, I emphasize, guys, take this seriously throughout Louisiana. And if you live in near a river where that's very vulnerable to flash flooding, and even in the areas where you don't necessarily experience many flash flood events, generally speaking, you still want to at least be aware of this possibility, because even in isolated area where thunder showers are staying over the same area for a long period of time, could easily bring historic flash flooding that even prior flash flooding, so-called flash flooding events didn't bring in your specific area. So you need to take every flash flooding event seriously, as if there's going to be potentially the worst flash flooding you've ever seen in your area. So definitely prepare throughout Louisiana and much of southern Mississippi. But that's it for now, guys. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related videos, such as tropical updates, as well as winter season forecast videos in the future. And I hope you guys all have a great day.